Parkinson's, everybody used to think was a genetic disease, and then it turns out it's only 6% genetic and 94% environmental burden.
More than 115 million Americans have prediabetes, and most don't even know it.
Tired midday, being thirsty, gaining weight that can't come off, even that only 10 pounds. That's probably glucose and insulin dysregulation going on, and that's prediabetes.
Today's guest is Jim LaValle.
Hey!
This is Jim LaValle, clinical pharmacist, author of over 26 books, and creator of the Synapsin nasal spray, founder of Metabolic Code, chief science officer at Lifetime, and the expert pro athletes and Olympians trust with their health.
We developed something called Synapsin, which was a nasal spray.
With the RG3?
I developed that.
Hold on, you're the one who developed it?
I'm the developer of that.
Why did I not know that? I do this nasal spray every morning, and it puts my life in high definition. I hear better, see better, speak better. Everything is just, it's almost like the limitless pill.
Metabolic disease is the influence of what we do to ourselves, our genetics, and what the environment does to us, right? Here, I need you to do this cold plunge. I want you to do this sauna. I want you to do these stem cells. I want you to do these exosomes. But you still have to create foundational health with people.
It'd be fair to say that we currently, when it comes to modern medicine, we live in a algorithmic pharmaceutical-driven system.
What we fail to do is...
Welcome to another episode of A Healthy Point of View podcast. I'm your host, Sam Tejada, and as usual, we're bringing experts from all over the world to talk about health, wellness, beauty, and mindset. Today's guest, you've probably seen him on all the large stages, the A4M, coaching doctors of the doctors of the doctors. This guy here is an expert in metabolic health. When it comes to peptides, he's the guru. Right? We see him talking on the news, on other podcasts, especially with everything that's going on. Today's topic, we're going to go deep into metabolic health. We're going to talk about metabolic disease. We're going to be talking about how to truly optimize your health. Today's guest is Jim LaValle.
Hey!
Welcome.
All right.
Welcome to A Healthy Point of View.
That's the best introduction ever.
You know, that's what I want to hear, man.
I'm just telling you right now. Like
my goal.
I'm juiced up now.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So, Jim, it's a pleasure to have you here on A Healthy Point of View podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
It's you're definitely one of the people that I've always wanted to have on the podcast. You know, you move around quite a bit. You speak internationally, everything from the International Peptide Society, the A4M. You're all over the place and heavily involved. So, Jim, you're heavily involved in multiple different areas, especially when it comes to the education.
Right.
And you know, you're one of the gurus behind peptides. We got a lot happening in the peptide industry as well. So, the first question I'm going to ask you before we get into the meat and potatoes of stuff, for the viewers and listeners, I want them to get to know who Jim LaValle truly is. So, we're going to go way back from when you were like 5 years old. Like, what was that upbringing? Where did you grow up? And how the heck did you get where you're at today?
Well, I was born in Pittsburgh, so I'm a Go Steelers still.
Oh, there you go.
You know, and yeah, Italian family. I was a scared little boy that sat in the corner and was really very introverted when I was young. And as I started to grow, I got to about 7th grade. All of a sudden, I got tall and got some broad shoulders. And that kind of changed some things a little bit. I always liked studying, always liked reading, always, I think, was very inquisitive about things. I'd say sensitive. And then, you know, just becoming an athlete, that's what lit my fire. I remember at age 13, I'm going into my freshman year in high school, and I made my mom and dad take a bench, a barbell, and a set of weights on vacation in the trunk of the car. I was like, I got to train because I'm going to try out for freshman football, all boys school, top league in the state of Ohio, right? Because we had moved to Ohio. And I just had a passion for it from then on, and, you know, was just absolutely in love with staying physically fit. And that eventually led to, you know, competing, qualifying for a national event in bodybuilding. And
Oh, nice.
and but you know what was interesting was I also was kind of a sickly little kid. I mean, I thought amoxicillin was a part of my meal plan, and Dimetap was dessert. I mean, I was sickly, allergy shots, all that stuff. And that's where I really discovered, why integrative health was so important. So I got to be 20 years old. I won that bodybuilding competition. I felt terrible, man. I had skin rashes and, bloating and all this stuff going on. I had to go to somebody. This is back in 1982. Wow. I went to someone who was very knowledgeable in integrative care, and I listened to them, followed through, changed my life, changed the way I felt. I was going through pharmacy school, and I was lucky that it was, the Lloyd brothers, which were the founders of it, most famous botanical extractors in the world at one point. And so we had pharmacognosy and organic medicinal chemistry and compounding back then, right? So it just kind of combined for me. And that was the path I went. I didn't want to just give out drugs and tell people, here's your prescription and, here's the side effects. I wanted to really understand their chemistry. And that's kind of how it all flowed together for me. I sure was familiar with the pharmacy, though, because I was always there almost every week getting some kind of medicine.
Yeah. Well, what year did you become a pharmacist?
1983.
1983. Man, so pharmacy was very different back then.
You know what? When I was going through pharmacy school, we weren't allowed to use a calculator. We had to use a slide rule. Wow. That tells you how long ago I went through pharmacy school, right? It was very different because we had to learn how to compound things and make things and extract.
So you guys really
things.
had like the big cylinder bucket thing that with the mixer?
all that, man. We're doing the whole thing with the mortar and pestle and isolating compounds from extracts and making new compounds.
That's pretty cool, man.
It was pretty neat. I mean, it was interesting. I had a lot of regrets about going through pharmacy initially because I was so into natural therapies and botanical medicine, chiropractic, physical medicine training, all this stuff. It's like, why did I choose this? Yeah. Why? And you know what? It's the best thing that could have happened because I thoroughly understand how receptors work in your body and everything from an emotion to a toxin, to a botanical, to a nutrient, to a peptide. Right. Everything gets influenced by what happens at those receptors. I could not be happier and more proud to be a pharmacist than, and I've taught in medical school, pharmacy school, Oriental medicine school. I mean, I've taught in a lot of different schools, and I'm just really happy that, the plan that was laid out for me that I took it.
That's amazing. Amazing. So you did bodybuilding, and feel free to just tell me if you don't want to answer this question.
Sure.
But when you did bodybuilding, was it natural bodybuilding or did you use performance enhancement?
I used performance enhancing. I didn't do a lot. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I was very strong as a 16-year-old. I had a 400-pound bench natural. I mean, that was pretty legit for a 16-year-old kid. Yeah. And so I was pretty strong, pretty thick. But I did use some performance enhancing drugs when I was going through my competition. I only did 2 competitions. After my second competition, I said, this isn't me. And I never really took any performance enhancing agents after that. It just didn't feel right to me. I just wanted to train and be healthy.
Would you say that the bodybuilding world of how you would change your physique, including the performance enhancement drugs, motivated you to go into pharmacy?
No, it's interesting. Pharmacy for me was, it really was, I was at the pharmacy so much. And this independent pharmacist was just like the nicest healthcare provider taking care of me. And I was like, I want to be like him. And my mom was a technician at a Rexall pharmacy with the whole soda fountain thing. Remember, this is 1964. I'm 66 years old. 1964, I'm sitting on the soda fountain at the Rexall pharmacy looking at my mom making stuff.
Right.
I think that was the initial piece of it. But then I actually got interested more in vitamins and nutrients first.
Okay.
And then because I decided to compete, and the way I am, if I'm going to compete, I'm going to figure out how I'm going to win. Right. And there wasn't any way I was going to win back then because, back then and there wasn't, natural bodybuilding. But I didn't go heavy like a lot of, I'd say my gym mates were doing it. They were really into it big time. But I just, honestly, I was getting ready to train for my third show. I just looked at, what I was going to have to do. And I just said, I'm going to dedicate myself to my studies. And I actually went He just passed away. Kim Wood was the strength coach for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Oh, wow.
And he was Nautilus Midwest distributor. And he had called the Kong room, all the Nautilus equipment, experimental Nautilus equipment. I got a job as a trainer going through school. And I met with him and he put me through a workout.
Wow.
And it changed the way I thought about working out. The intensity was high. It was like a Dorian Yates style workout, right? Higher intensity, really intense. And it just lit a fire under me to go that path. So I got into more being able to run hills and bike and do high intensity training and become more, I'd say, I don't like using the term a hybrid athlete. I just wanted to be more complete as a person that was, loved physical activity.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. And the reason why I ask about the performance enhancement drugs through bodybuilding,
right.
You see back there's a couple of trophies. So,
there you go.
I did bodybuilding in my early 20s, and I used performance enhancement drugs.
Sure.
Throughout those couple of years that I did, I only did a total of 3 shows, got nationally qualified. But same thing. Actually, my story was very similar to yours, but that actually did bring me more into understanding more of the human biology and how all of our hormones work, the different our organs, their function, and how these different, not just the actual performance enhancement drugs, but then also all of the different nutrients, the vitamins, minerals, amino acids, how it functions. And interesting enough, when I was doing those bodybuilding shows, that was when I started working with Dr. Willix at the age of 20. I started working with him with Cenogenics, so I was
right.
I was their phlebotomy guy to go to their homes, all the patients' homes, these multi-million-dollar patients.
Right.
And I saw how they were changing their health, right? Based off of, and I saw what they're prescribing them, a lot of different nutrients.
Right.
Hormone optimization, the testosterone growth hormone. I was like, man, this is kind of similar to my stack that I'm doing in the gym, So it made me take a deeper dive and start actually listening to someone like Dr. Willix.
Right.
And that's really what got me so deep into the functional medicine space. So, but it's cool to hear your story on it. So, I know you're a big part of the A4M, which everyone knows the A4M.
Co-chair.
They're in, I think, 126 countries around the world or something like that. Dr. Bob Goldman, dear friend of mine.
Right.
So, Dr. Goldman goes way back into the bodybuilding days.
Absolutely.
Also. Did you guys meet back in those days? Or?
No, we didn't. It's interesting. I think I was just lecturing there a lot in the early years before I ever really connected with Dr. Goldman. And then, in the later years of me being there, I think I'm in my 26th or 7th year, there teaching now. We connected and met, and I know, super passionate about physicality, right? Training, martial arts, all that.
Very much so.
Right?
Yeah. He just wrote his memoir not too long ago, and I was fortunate enough to be part of it. So,
that's great.
Yeah, he's always been someone that I look up to. So, all right, in just a sentence or two, Jim, I want you to answer this, and I know there's a lot more to unpack on what I'm going to ask you. What is metabolic health?
Yeah, that's a great question. Metabolic health is the ability of your body to be resilient, to have metabolic reserve, to have capacity to take stress on and maintain homeostasis, or your body's ability to stay in connection as a system of systems so that you're aging gracefully and being able to perform at your best as you're aging.
Love that. So when we talk about metabolic health, one of the things that we're hearing a lot of is when people have some kind of disease. I've even heard this with cancer, right?
Sure.
People label it as a metabolic disease.
Right.
So how would you define metabolic disease?
Yeah, metabolic disease is when the signals in your body are no longer coordinated to create health. And now those signals are starting to create a disturbance, which either damages cells or starts to reprogram cells to de-differentiate, like in cancer. So it's, metabolic disease is the influence of what we do to ourselves, our genetics, and what the environment does to us, right? It's that combination of things that if we don't stay on top of it, pushes us in the wrong direction.
Right. So that leads me to this question, and you're going to see where I'm going here.
I know I'm worried. I'm worried, man. I'm feeling like you're the DA or something here, man.
Not yet. But we're going to start unpacking some stuff, man, because you have a lot of knowledge that I want to tap into. So this is the CDC. According to the CDC, 90% of the U.S. healthcare spending goes towards chronic disease. My question to you is, why have we become the sickest generation despite having more health information than ever before?
Well, we eat too much. We eat too often. We don't have quality foods. We're under a tremendous amount of stress. We don't get enough sleep. And that doesn't include our genetics or the environmental exposures that we get. So it's, I think, a foregone conclusion when you do a bunch of things wrong that you're not going to have the outcome that you would like to have. And I think that's what's happened with our healthcare is, I've worked on people for 41 years. And I've always said it's work to be healthy, but it's worth it if you value feeling healthy. Right. That's the key. Right. And so I think it's, look, there's a lot of environmental burden, as a former firefighter, you know the statistics on that and what firefighters get exposed to and what the outcomes are. Obviously the, lead and cardiovascular disease and mercury and, issues with dementia and Parkinson's now. I remember Parkinson's, everybody used to think was a genetic disease. And then it turns out it's only 6% genetic and 94% environmental burden. Right. Yeah. So I think it's really important to realize, I just came back from Italy. I was picking plant buds in the Swiss Alps and in southern Italy to take them into a lab. And we're talking about different ways to extract plant stem cells, all this stuff. Bottom line is they don't allow things to be sprayed on their food. They don't allow chemicals to be deployed on their soils. Right. And I think, and they also still sit outside and have a really lengthy dinner and talk. And, there's a lot of things that really, it was amazing to go back there and feel that, because it's a lot of the stuff that we just don't do anymore.
A lot of the community stuff too, especially in this era of being on all these different tech devices where even the young kids, that's what they consider having a night out, right?
I'm surprised we're talking. We should be texting each other during this, right? I mean, I think it's unfortunate that we don't allow people to, we're not embracing our folks as they get older. We're kind of isolating them. And if anybody's heard me on a podcast before, I've always told the story of my father, duodenal adenocarcinoma, very rare cancer, had a Whipple surgery at the age of 79, came to live with me. That surgery, you're going to live about 1 or 2 years. He lived 13 years. He lived 13 years because he had a family around him. He had a grandson that he looked forward to seeing every day. And I personally, it's easy to read the blue zones and understand that cultural aspect, but to really see that firsthand, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's powerful. So, Jim, a lot of the things that you just talked about, answering that question based off that stat from the CDC, a lot of those things that you mentioned are a lot of the things that we're currently hearing through this big movement that's happening right now, the MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again.
Right.
So we keep on hearing about the crops being sprayed with all of these different pesticides like glyphosate.
Right.
We hear about the water system and the way they're cleaning the water. Even the school buses that have all of these different fumes that the kids are breathing in and causing a lot of this metabolic disease. What is your input on this MAHA movement?
Well, first of all, I think any movement that is going to help protect people's health is a movement in the right direction. I also think that there's a lot of really good healthcare providers out there that are incredibly knowledgeable in this area of what I call integrative, functional, longevity health, right?
Right.
I don't think they're being tapped on enough to participate in it. I think there's still a lot of a movement of, more of like influencers. Nothing wrong with influencers. because they get people to wake up, right? But I think when you start getting into talking about, what are you going to do as a program? What are you going to do as a plan? What are there's a lot that has to be done yet programmatically to create education, to get more people involved and knowledgeable in this field of how we do prevention. But I'm a big supporter of, we need to make America healthy again.
Why do you think a lot of these like functional medicine, integrative medicine doctors are not necessarily putting in the time to like the MAHA movement?
I think I know for myself. I mean, I've had very big clinics. My institute in Ohio that I had 3 physicians I worked with, nurses, you name it, OB-GYN. And we had a lot going on. Imaging, we're busy.
Yeah.
We're just busy trying to help people get well. So we don't have a lot of time. I mean, I literally, up to 2 years ago, I devoted 0 time to posting or doing anything because I was just really busy writing books, educating, and trying to get other healthcare providers to do what they need to do. And then I just finally, my son actually, when he graduated from college, came to work for me. I should say with me, actually. He was like, "Dad, you got to get out there and get posting. I mean, you're one of the people that are writing all the books and teaching people. You got to get some of your wisdom out there." And so that was I think that's one of the reasons. And I do think we can't take 2 or 3 hours per person. We're never going to have enough time to see people. So we've got to become more efficient at how we're, helping people to come to decisions. And we got to figure a way to motivate people.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack there,
Yeah. And so interesting enough, I go every month to DC for the meetings for MAHA with Bobby Kennedy, Dr. Oz, all those guys. And I've always said the same thing. It's like, I know some of the greatest functional medicine doctors, but none of them are ever here in this room, And I know because a lot of them actually work within my organization, they don't have the time, right? And if they're not getting paid, they're not going there. But then I start thinking, it's like, guys, we're talking about we want to see the change in medicine. It's like, we're going to have to figure out how to volunteer a little bit of time or something,
I have to agree with you there. I mean, you do. I'm going to the FDA PCAT committee hearings to testify in regards to peptides. I did that too, the last time. I did it this time. I provided a lot of information to the law firms that are collecting information related to the Department of Health and Human Services, because we had monographs written on peptides with the International Peptide Society with all the full text references. You have to lean in some. You may not be able to do it all the way because you're busy. Maybe you got children at home, whatever the reason is. But I think we all have that responsibility to try to help people, right? And I think, that's been kind of as I move, I guess, into my later years now that I'm, fully a senior citizen, I've got to try to commit more time to that next generation.
And it's so powerful having people like yourself involved in those type of movements because it truly gives that validation versus that influencer. Like influencers, how you said, they're great, but at the same time, it's just giving that other side, the big food companies, the big pharma, and whoever else they bring into their ecosystem to talk trash. But that's what they push out there. Well, this just this influencer, a guy who has 1 million followers on Instagram who's, preaching this stuff that's not really that accurate. But when we have, an MD, a cardiologist, or a pharmacist that's speaking on these topics, man, that's powerful.
Well, that's why I spent most of my time, 20 years almost teaching at the College of Medicine, College of Pharmacy at University of Cincinnati. Was on faculty at George Washington for several years, the New York State College of Chiropractic and Oriental Medicine for a couple of years. But I wrote databases that were American Pharmaceutical Association endorsed. Like, here is the evidence on these compounds. Because I think that's where it always got sideways, is that you had these two sides battling going, there's no evidence, right? The conventional medicine was, there's no evidence. And then the natural compounders would be busy, or, the natural, I would say, advocates would be saying, yeah, but your drugs are poisoning people. There'd never be this common ground. And that's what I kind of wanted to do, is establish that bridge, is that, there's value in modern medicine. If you were a paramedic, you weren't going to save somebody's life with echinacea when they, when you were pulling them out of the car, right? So, I mean, I think it's really important that we value each other and we see the continuum of care. That you know what, self-care, and I hate bringing it up, but when I talk to docs, the first thing I say is, I can name any 4 drugs, and you can't give me a single study on the 4 of them being given together in a clinical trial. So we're all swimming around in this fishbowl trying to figure out how we're going to get people well, and the body is very complex. And that's why metaflammation is such a damaging, thing once it starts to occur. Once you start lighting that fire, you have to figure out how to push that fire and extinguish it before, people really start to get harm to their health.
Right.
So
to go back to that topic of metabolic health and metabolic disease, we talked about how 90% of our spending goes to, chronic disease. So let's say we have one of our wealthy patients, right, who has an unlimited pocketbook. Where do they start? Because right now, when you talk about the biohacking space, it's just like there's a lot of things where that pocketbook can start replenishing itself very quickly.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had a lot of people that have come to me over the years, or the facilities that I've, organized, and, I don't know whether they're wealthy or not, right?
Right.
But I do know this. If I don't correct their insulin resistance, if I don't get their glucose down, if they're making a bunch of bad actor lipids, like lipoprotein(a), apolipoprotein B, if their kidney function is faltering, and that means they got a lot of oxidative stress, if their immune system, their neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio is off, I can give them all of the, here, I need you to do this cold plunge. I want you to do this sauna. I want you to do these stem cells. I want you to do these exosomes. I want you to do these peptides, which I think are all kind of valid when they're done appropriately and in sequence, but you still have to create foundational health with people. The one thing that everybody has to do is eat and drink.
Right.
You can't get around it. Well, one time when I was working, I was going to Arizona working in a clinic, and there were some people there called breatharians, and I guess they got around eating. They were breatharians. They just breathed in and got their nutrients.
I don't know.
But I saw them at a McDonald's one night, so I was like, I don't know. I was driving by, I saw them there, and I was like, I don't think that worked. But my point being is, I think you've got to get people to understand you're going to have to establish habits. There are no shortcuts.
Right.
Now, I'm not talking about an injury, right? If you have an injury, labrum tear, or you want to do PRP, or you want to do some sort of biologic therapy for that kind of stuff to repair tissue, I would still argue you will repair better the better your biochemistry is aligned, right? The healthier you are, the better your metabolic reserve, the better your chance at repair. So that's where it starts. And that means, where's your gut health at, right? I mean, if all of us that have went through kind of the functional longevity, anti-aging movement understand the value of gut health, why we need to, get that gut permeability under control because of its relationships to autoimmunity. And then you have to look at hormones, and it's not just about your sex hormones. It's what's going on with your cortisol curve. Are you stressed out? Are you sympathetic dominant? Some of these most basic things I think we don't emphasize enough. And a lot of times those wealthy folks you were talking about will come into at least our clinics with 4 pages of an Excel spreadsheet. Here's my peptides, here's my hormones, here's my powders, here's my pills. But yet I look at their labs and we go through them with the docs, and it's, you're still insulin resistant.
Right. Well, they have the whole kitchen sink over there.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's, for me, is why it's important that you still got to create foundational health. I think that's one of the biggest things I try to do for people, is try to motivate them to, stop thinking about what you don't have and think about what you get to have. Right.
So that foundational health, I know one thing that you say often is test, don't guess. So when it comes to the foundation of it, how important is this test, don't guess, and what is test, don't guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to look at lab values, especially if you're going to apply any therapies. But it also is a great foundation And there's a lot of different labs that you can do. Obviously, if someone was a firefighter or a first responder, I do education with Special Operations Command, actually the last 5 years, almost monthly.
Nice.
So people get exposed to things. So you're going to think about, maybe I got to test for exposures, make sure that's up. But for most people, you need to get things like glucose and insulin and hemoglobin A1C, and more than just cholesterol, HDL, LDL, and triglycerides. You have to get an advanced lipid panel.
Right.
And you've got to look for oxidative markers like homocysteine and C-reactive protein and adiponectin, galectin-3. Look for a big enough panel, including thyroid hormone and antibodies to thyroid, morning cortisol serum, maybe a 4-point salivary cortisol if you can do it. But in the end, you're trying to get a complete picture of someone. The way I did it when I first wrote the book, Cracking the Metabolic Code, and this was before pattern analysis was kind of cool, I wrote about pattern analysis. You know, your adrenal glands and your pancreas and your thyroid are kind of signaling each other. When your cortisol goes up, your insulin goes up, your blood sugar goes, up, and now your thyroid hormones start to go down. So that's a relationship. And then you have gut, immune, brain. It's another relationship that occurs. So I really think that, that was one of the biggest things for me, was that I understood patterns. I saw enough people. And you have to look at labs in order to see patterns. Now, you can see those patterns in symptoms as well.
Right.
But see, sometimes people have a lot of symptoms, right? Man, I'm gassy, I'm bloated, I crash at 3 p.m., I'm craving a bag of potato chips when I get home at night, I'm not thinking clearly, right?
Yeah.
I'm achy. And then they get a lab test, and doc goes, well, I don't know, kind of okay. But that's because those lab values weren't outside the markers of normal, and we weren't looking at lab values as trending analysis, and we weren't looking at lab values as a complex of things together. So if your blood sugar is 95 and your kidney filtration is low and your blood pressure is slightly high and your lipids are off and your insulin's elevated, well, now all of a sudden you're pretty insulin resistant versus just having a glucose that's 95, right? So patterns are really important. That's why you test. That's why you want to understand the whole person and not just an individual lab.
Right. So I love where you're going with this. So, and it's almost like it's a bunch of if-then statements, right? It's almost
if
like
then that.
Yeah, right. So, and you do talk about, you describe the body as systems of systems.
That's right.
So where does modern medicine, where has modern medicine gone wrong with treating the body in an isolated piece?
It's pretty interesting. You look at Chinese medicine, 5-element theory, right? If you modernized Chinese 5-element theory, it was kind of like a systems of systems, right? One system signaling another. We got into patent medicine, in the mid 1900s, right? Hey, you're sick, you take this, you get better. If you have inflammation, you take an anti-inflammatory. But we didn't look upstream or downstream to understand what was going on when you did that. And that led to polypharmacy. And I'm not saying anything controversial. It's one of the most important topics when you talk to clinical pharmacists is polypharmacy. People on too many medications. One medication is trying to treat another symptom that you're having, and now that's creating another complication, right? So when you don't look upstream or downstream or look at a pattern, you fail to kind of recognize that maybe if I got to the root, or the people say root cause, I'm a root causes guy. I rarely think that there's one thing, that's typically going on. So I think that, that's where modern medicine kind of took a turn. But, that's all changing now. You got Stanford saying you're only as strong as your weakest organ. We're understanding the impact of genetics and epigenetics and lipidomics and how all that's expressing now. And we're seeing there's a lot of scientific publications now, like the relationship between the gut, the kidneys, and the heart, or the brain, the gut, and sex hormones.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. So there's this pattern recognition is now being written about, that organ systems are signaling each other, and that the immune system and the nervous system is probably the the real kind of, I'd say the wiring, right?
Yeah.
And then the organs and tissues are responding to all that. And so we got to look at it and go, okay, what's the puzzle look like?
Jim, I tell you, the main reason why I left the fire department is that 90% of those 911 calls, I was a product to the broken medical system. And it was, what I was seeing is year after year, right? I work for a municipality, so I get to know these residents that I'm transporting to the hospital. I was seeing exactly what you mentioned, right? Patient, acute illness, goes to the hospital. I take them to the hospital. I run on them 6 months later. Then it becomes every other month. And the amount of doctors that they start seeing, they're seeing the cardiologist, they're seeing the
nephrologist, they got it all going on.
No one's communicating amongst each other,
right?
So all these different systems, but no one's communicating. And what I'm noticing is they're just being put on more medications.
Right.
And one medication is counteracting with the other one. These doctors are not communicating. So would it be fair to say that we currently, when it comes to modern medicine, we live in a pharmaceutical-driven, an algorithmic pharmaceutical-driven system?
100%. And what we fail to do is, so one of the big databases that I wrote with my team, and give my team credit, was drug-induced nutrient depletion. So you give a drug, and so you think if I take this drug and I don't have an allergic reaction, or my tongue doesn't swell, or my head doesn't hurt real bad, that there's no problem. But for example, hydrochlorothiazide is used for blood pressure.
Yeah.
Hydrochlorothiazide, it depletes potassium. Drink a big glass of orange juice. So you're gonna tell somebody, and when do we give hydrochlorothiazide? People that are pre-diabetic and are renal hypertensive, have them drink a full glass of orange juice, right? Get your blood sugars up. But more importantly, it depletes magnesium. And what I used to make my pharmacy students do is I'd make them write out the signs of magnesium deficiency in the body. Then I'd make them write out the side effects to hydrochlorothiazide. And then back when you had acetates, remember how old I am? I'd make them layer them over each other. And it was amazing how often the side effects of the drug correlated to the nutrients that were potentially being depleted by the drug.
Wow.
And so, it always it's perplexed me that we don't make that a mandatory piece of drug discovery, like when you're doing new drug discovery, because vitamins and minerals and amino acids are essential to our body. So if you're depleting them, you're changing the way your body's enzyme systems are working. So no wonder when you're on 8 different drugs and you're depleting all these nutrients that the problem happens. And 2 quick examples, I don't want to belabor it, but oral contraceptives and women. Women are now finally being told you should be on folic acid for 6 months after being on an oral contraceptive, or you have an increased risk of a birth defect in your child. That's because folate and a bunch of other nutrients get depleted by oral contraceptives. It's not just folate; it's a bunch. So that's a big one, right? And the other one is everybody's using the antacids, right? So the proton pump inhibitors. Depletes magnesium, vitamin D, calcium, protein, B12. Bones get thin. Magnesium gets depleted. You get muscle cramps.
Yeah.
But none of that comes out. You don't get a black box warning on that till after the drug's been out. And now all that stuff starts showing up. So I totally agree with you. That's an algorithm-based solution that doesn't look at upstream or downstream effects enough.
Right. Nor does it look at lifestyle, right?
No, no.
You come into your regular doctor's office, they check your blood pressure. Oh, you got high blood pressure, take this pill.
Yeah.
Oh, what about my movement, exercise, nutrition? What about my sleep?
Yeah.
No one's going to take it.
Am I salt sensitive, not salt sensitive, right?
Or you're retaining water. So interesting enough, because we're talking about nutrients. I remember when I got into the industry, the functional medicine space, and one of my big things that I went deep with Dr. Willick's on, which Liquivita is known for, is IV nutrients therapy.
Oh, sure.
And when I first got into IV nutrients therapy, and I started taking Dr. Gen's courses about almost 20 years ago.
Yes.
And a lot of the OGs is what I call it. I was part of their training. I remember, and even actual physicians would call it snake oil.
Right.
And I started scratching my head because when I started taking these courses, I'm like, man, a lot of the stuff that we're putting in these IV bags, everything from magnesium, right, calcium,
You're using
potassium.
it.
I use it in emergency medicine.
Exactly.
These are actual. We're classifying them as drugs, and they're actual vitamins, minerals, and amino acids.
100%.
Thiamine, right? Diabetic patient, after you give them
Yeah.
the glucose intravenous, we're giving them thiamine. All of this stuff, we're using it in emergency medicine. They're using it in the ER. So how is this snake oil?
Well, one of the big ones that I always talk about when I'm educating is renal failure. So when someone's going into renal failure, a nephrologist will give sodium bicarbonate tablets to alkalinize the urine, and it spares the kidneys so they extend the time to when they need to be on dialysis. Well, why aren't we alkalinizing their urine earlier by making sure they're eating vegetables and getting plenty of magnesium and potassium, which is going to alkalinize them and, help their blood pressure and all the good things that, magnesium in particular does. But we don't think that way. We wait until, we'll do some sodium bicarb at the end. Something as simple as the pH of the urine. Nephrologists know this. You're trying to neutralize an acidotic pH because when it's acidic, it's excess hydrogen ions, more free radicals, damaging your kidneys. But we wait till end stage. We wait. It's a disease-based model. And once again, I happen to think that, if somebody gets in big trouble with their health, they get in an accident, trauma, major illnesses, you're probably in pretty good shape here. We just never developed that other side of the continuum, which is sorely needed now, and I think everybody's realizing it, right?
Yeah. I agree. Anything like acute emergencies, you're having a massive heart attack,
right?
Your arm gets cut off. We're not going to spray vegetables and stuff on your arms. I'm going to take you to the OR.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So 100%. So when we're talking about the systems in the body, the systems versus systems,
right,
and whatnot. When it comes to medical providers, and even in the modern medicine world, and this is going to be for the medical providers to tap into like the first couple of years of medical school. How important is a medical provider, a doctor, MD, nurse practitioner, any of these people who have the ability to diagnose and prescribe? How important is it for them to actually understand and really know all of the metabolic pathways?
Oh, I think it's critical because I think it just makes them a better provider. Even if they're going to stay conventional with their medical therapies and, just prescribe, they'll be more equipped to understand, what's going on by understanding those metabolic pathways, without a doubt. And I think it's important to understand that, when you learn about metabolic pathways, you learn about nutrients that are essential nutrients that are needed, and you can test for those nutrients, and that should be part of that equation as well.
Absolutely. So when we're talking about all those metabolic pathways and kind of understanding how a lot of those nutrients work, earlier you talked about free radicals. Right. Can you just give us a quick 411 on a breakdown of what are free radicals? How do we neutralize those free radicals, just so we have a better understanding?
Yeah. So I think if you want to think of free radicals, think of them as the rate of rusting in your body. And when you're throwing off electrons, so you're basically your body's trying to have hydrogen ions and electrons, and when you're throwing off a lot of these electrons, like for example, in your mitochondria, so in the powerhouse of your cell, you have an inner mitochondrial membrane and an outer mitochondrial membrane. And your body goes through what's called electron transport in that cell, right, to make energy. It's called the electron transport chain. And every time it carries an electron, it shoots off some energy for your cell to use. Well, the problem is when the mitochondria get damaged, those electrons escape. And those damage your tissues. So you can think of it as, it's something that's good. Our body really can't generate energy without oxidative stress. It's just there has to be a balance, and that's called redox poise, oxidation reduction reaction, balancing that transport of the electrons so they don't leak out and don't create damage. And then the problem is that chemicals can do that. Your diet can do it. even your own hormones. I mean, the most damaging compound in your body is insulin, but it's also the most valuable, right?
Right.
So I think it's important for folks. So, well, what's going to help to neutralize that? Well, not having big spikes in your glucose, right? Postprandial hyperglycemia is still the number one reason for heart disease. So learning how to eat, maybe you're using a CGM, right? Little glucose monitor to learn, how do I balance out my glucose better?
Right.
Am I sleeping well? Am I under stress? What's my resting heart rate like? Am I taking deep breaths? Because sympathetic stress induces more of that kind of cellular behavior.
Right.
And so, how do you neutralize it? You neutralize it through exercise, but not too much, right?
Right.
Hydration. Eating foods that are rich in color and dense in nutrients, but not necessarily calories. And then I really think one of the most important things is, learn how to not be in sympathetic tone. Don't look at your blood pressure. Is your blood pressure still high at night? You should be dipping. You should be a little higher in the morning than you are at night. Your resting heart rate should be, below 62 ideally, right? And that's what I think you start to neutralize those things. And then it's just understanding how do you start to move down that funnel of metabolic inflammation, right? Like what is the process? And then that gives you the idea of, well, how can I reverse back up that funnel and get back up top where it's homeostasis and health?
Right. Right. So I love that about a lot of these natural things that you mentioned, to be able to neutralize those free radicals, right? But
we can go to the fancy stuff like methylene blue. You want me to get going on that? Like urolithin A and PQQ.
I was going to try to do a nice transition to that.
Let's just jump in. Let's go.
So I was going to go, well, what about the guy that, can't really, get his sympathetic system regulated? The firefighter, right? Who has sleep deprivation. He's waking up in the middle of the night. Now he has adrenal fatigue. Who has to do that morning throughout the day cortisol test. Now you got people that have taken it too far with their health, eating all the highly processed foods, the chemicals that are in there, or maybe the job that they have that they're getting exposed to a lot of chemicals or smoke or whatever carcinogens.
Right.
Where now it's like the amount of toxins that are sitting in their fat cells, inside of their gut lining, inside of their bones, the level of oxidative stress that this person has. It's like eating a few strawberries and blueberries ain't going to do the job at this point.
No, it's not. I mean, I'm big on, the exposome, right? So, I mean, I've, taught on how to detoxify people at A4M for the last, probably 25 years. Because pesticides, metals, we know they're there because you can test for them.
Right.
And we do know the heavier you are, the more toxic you will be because it does store in your fat cells, like you said. And so you have to become more proactive in our world today, right? So saunas are a great way to, literally get some of that out of your tissues. And, people will debate, is it a traditional Finnish sauna? Is it a wet sauna? Is it a dry sauna? You know what? If you're sweating, you're probably going to be getting some stuff out. And any type of heat, whether it's heat with moisture or heat with dry, that's stressing your sympathetic nervous system and conditioning you, is probably good. And I think that's over the last few years, some folks have finally come to that conclusion. But you're going to need to take things beyond just eating some blueberries and, and getting some spermidine.
So you talk about the sauna, and how you said there's all kinds of different saunas. The infrared sauna, and, what are the wavelengths? And you get a little bit crazy with it sometimes. But, when people are detoxing, a lot of people are trying to do the right thing, and even with taking some supplements, but sometimes they end up taking things that are just mobilizing these toxins.
Correct.
But the toxins are still kind of just floating in your system. So what are some other things that are also important for the listeners and viewers to understand that it's not just some of these supplements that you see on TikTok and whatnot,
Yeah.
there's like a process that you teach about that
Right.
people have to go through.
Yeah, I think the first step is if you have a lot of environmental burden, you probably need to fortify baseline status. Like, where's your liver at? Where's your kidneys at? Do you have an acidotic pH to your urine? So you correct pH. You support the liver so that it starts to improve bile acid release. You add fiber to make sure that you're starting to be able to, bind things with fiber. Things like guar gum does a good job of that. But then you can take things that are active to bind to, compounds. Things like chlorella, cilantro actually do a pretty good job of binding to, pesticides and metals. If you want to go a little heavier duty, obviously, under prescription, things like DMSA works very well. And then, of course, there's, IV protocols that are done to also help people to detoxify. But for me, it's always important to support the organs of detoxification.
Right.
So I never have wanted people, and I've never taught it for people to feel bad when they're detoxifying.
Right.
You should try to support their organ system so they can get rid of these things relatively easily. And if they can't, then that means they're overdoing it, and they should probably slow down, create more support, be working with a practitioner, and not trying to do it on their own, especially if they're feeling, rough and unstable. Because, when you're trying to push these things through the liver and the kidneys and your skin, your gut, it can be pretty dramatic if you're not equipped.
Yeah. Yeah. I can only imagine. And not only that, but some people that are very toxic, detoxing too quickly can really put them in a
Herxheimer,
right?
Right? They can do that old Herxheimer response, which will get them very, very sick and very upset, especially folks that have, vectors, Lyme and, those kind of things, or, chronic inflammatory response syndromes, right? Environmental burden.
Yeah.
And even, things like metals. I mean, I remember in the past, one of my docs, when we were, in our Cincinnati Institute, she was big on doing a lot of IVs, and every once in a while you liberate a little bit too much mercury or metals, and somebody, they'll feel foggy headed, unstable, maybe get some headaches. And I've done research, I remember doing research with, using suppositories, EDTA suppositories. We did a clinical trial, and, the IRB was you had to do it every day. Well, people got kind of achy, and we weren't allowed to do supportive nutrients because you were doing a study specifically on that, on that EDTA suppository.
Yeah. Even, and I think it's important for us to bring this up because we might have a lot of healthy people that are just trying to optimize their health, but then at the same time, we'll get some people that are very sick that are still trying to figure things out because they're sick and tired of the traditional system. And I remember when Dr. Willix and the whole team, we were at Hippocrates Health Institute,
right?
And we were dealing with some very sick patients there. I mean, they were flying from all over the world. And this is where a lot of new things were in development back then, doing NAD+, going into the hyperbaric chamber. And we saw, this is kind of where you learn. Unfortunately, you're learning on other patients. But people would get very, very sick, from some of these treatments if we really didn't understand their levels, their oxidative stress levels.
That's right.
So I want you to comment on the importance of that. You don't want to just take a cancer patient who's going through chemo and radiation already and throw them inside of a hyperbaric chamber or something like that,
Yeah.
Because it can produce more oxidative stress, which
I think one of the things you mentioned, like using NAD, is super popular right now, right?
Yeah.
NAD+, super popular, great therapy. But at the same time, if your mitochondria are damaged because of, environmental burden, or maybe you're just insulin resistant, we know people that are insulin resistant or people with diabetes have less mitochondria. They're not as dense. They have more ragged mitochondria. So that you go and you add NAD to try to make the mitochondria work harder. Well, all you're going to do is throw off more electrons and create potentially more damage. You may not feel better. And so that whole aspect of repair some first, get them sound, is important. I know for us, over the years, because, when I had my clinic in Cincinnati, it's a pretty big institute. We had a lot of, 4 times the national cancer average. So we had a fair amount of patients with cancer coming in. And you know, you don't want to push them hard. You want to build them up, support immune function, make sure that what they're going through their treatment, that they're not going to get secondary infections, that they're going to be nutritionally sound. And then as they're moving through their treatment, be able to gradually detoxify or work with them. So it really depends on the individual. It's why it's so important to understand where they're at in that position of what I would call in homotoxicology, which was Dr. Reckwig in the 60s when he wrote the book on homotoxicology, where the sicker you are, the more it becomes a cellular phenomena, right? Where the cell becomes sick. It's important to understand how far down that ladder someone is when you start to push these buttons of detoxification, because they may not have the resiliency to do what you're asking at the cellular level the body to do.
Yeah. Yep. I love that. Jim, more than 115 million Americans have prediabetes, and most don't even know it. What are the silent warning signs would surprise someone who believes they're perfectly healthy?
Tired midday, being thirsty, gaining weight that can't come off, even that only 10 pounds. You know that person, right? They just say, you know what, I got 10 or 15 pounds to lose and I'm working out hard and I'm eating right and I can't budget no matter what. That's probably glucose and insulin dysregulation going on, right?
Yeah.
And that's prediabetes. Could be cognitive function. That could be a big issue as well. Like, what are you thinking clearly? Because remember, dementia is type 3 diabetes. So the early warning signs would be, oh, I'm starting to feel foggy headed. I'm not as clear. And gee, when I eat ketogenic, my mind actually feels clearer. Well, yeah, because you can't use glucose, right? So I think that's the other piece that I think when you I listen to people, it's okay. So you don't utilize glucose well, you're gaining weight, you're feeling tired, you're kind of thirsty. You don't have as much energy as you think you should, right? Because typically when you're insulin resistant, you're losing that capacity to make 32 packets of energy when glucose comes in the cell. Now you're only making 2 packets. And you got a lot of waste product. You got a lot of lactate and pyruvate. And that creates an acidotic cell, which then creates the transformation of the DNA, the mitochondrial DNA, to make a cancer cell. So people with insulin resistance and diabetes have higher rates of cancer, right? So if I'm fatigued, easy, achy, don't recover from working out, a lot of lactate, another thing you may not be thinking about.
Absolutely. So this is from the CDC also. 3 out of every 4 American adults are living with a chronic disease. Why are we chasing optimization instead of fixing the actual dysfunction driving the epidemic?
Well, I think it's all in one continuum, right? You have to fix the issues before you can hope to optimize. And I like the term mastery. It's like start to understand your body and master your health, empower yourself. You can't optimize until you figure out, how do I unwind where I'm at? And I think that's where a lot of people try to skip those steps, right? Look at the world of peptides. And you would think, I'd be stopping right now so I could go and do a round of peps right now, right? Because it's but that's not me.
Right.
I believe they're incredibly, obviously, insulin being the first peptide. There's a lot of peptides on the market that are valuable. GLP-1's the latest example. But the point being is a lot of people just leaned into as if, these peptides are going to be we keep looking for miracles,
right,
whether it's Tibetan goji berries or the next peptide, right? And we got to, and I believe that super nutrients and peptides and nutraceuticals and IVs, all of it, it's all really good, but you still have to put an order to it, and you're still going to have to work on your health if you really want to be healthy.
Yeah.
I wish it was a different way. I mean, I just have to tell you, I have a rich family history that, my brother was 476 pounds at one point.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And, he passed at age 64. And my mother had dementia, early dementia, because, they scared her out of taking estrogen. Right? Because she was in that generation where, hey, estrogen's really bad. Don't take estradiol. Father, type 2 diabetic, world famous chef. He was that diabetic that eventually ended up with an intestinal cancer, which is very common for people with diabetes. Wow. So you see these things, and I think, we just gloss over it because we read it as a statistic. But when you feel it in your family or you're working on it like you have, like you see it, I know I have, it's like we can't be passive about convincing people that it's time for them to change. Yeah. If we really care about them, we got to figure a way to motivate them so that they feel empowered, and that helps them with their family, their loved ones, their community, their coworkers. Yeah. Right. That's how we build a community that's related to health, right? And how we want to be better.
I agree. I love that. I agree 100% with you. You've had the opportunity to work with a lot of elite athletes. You're the chief scientific officer for Lifetime.
Right.
Actually, that's the gym I go to, Lifetime Fitness. I
there
love
you
it.
Go.
Now, Lifetime, I can tell you, they put a lot of efforts into, especially now, like creating true longevity centers. At least I'm noticing they're really dabbling into that. So when it comes to what your role at Lifetime as chief scientific officer, how important are some of these different tests, like, for example, VO2 max or resting metabolic rate, et cetera?
Well, they have VO2 max testing going on all over the place at Lifetime. VO2 max is one of the essential things that's going to kind of give you an idea of your level of fitness and how well you're going to do as you progress in aging, right? Resting metabolic rate, important. And then again, if you go to one of the performance health and longevity centers, the Mioras, they also do lab tests, right? They want to look at labs. They want to see where your hormones are at. They want to see where your nutrients are at. Where's your blood sugar? Where's your insulin? Because I think we get dismissed, and I don't know if you see this, but I know for me, looking at a lot of people that were, pretty elite athletes, and what's funny is a lot of elite athletes end up with a higher percentage of them end up being diabetics. They're people with diabetes as they age, right? And they have other issues like cardiovascular disease because they pushed themselves really hard and didn't recover enough. So it's that aspect. What I really like about what Lifetime has done is a healthy way of life. They try to emphasize recovery is important. Get in that sauna. Yeah. There's yoga. There's Pilates. You can stretch. And I think those are the things that are really important, because I think if there's one thing I think I've learned over the years, it isn't how hard you train, it's how well you recover. And that's whether I'm working with a, world-class hockey player, NBA team, no matter who it is, you got to learn how to recover better.
Yeah, I agree, man. And Lifetime, that's one of the things that I love the most about that membership. I get stretched out once a week.
There you go.
They have the massage chairs. They have the cold pool, hot pool.
Yeah.
The sauna. I mean,
got
everything.
The compression, if you want it.
Socks.
You name it, man.
Yeah. The Normatec socks. And then obviously at our longevity centers, I got the red light bed, all the other tools and stuff. So, but I think I spend more time doing recovery than what I do actually working out.
Well, and that's why you're still looking good, feeling healthy, right? I mean, I think that's super important. I know I overtrained.
That's crazy, actually. I've never thought about that until now. I spend more time because a lot of the stuff I do for recovery, like I'll do my vagus nerve reset. I use
you use a Pulsetto.
Pulsetto.
Yeah, Pulsetto's great, right?
But I'll use it while I'm doing
better than
something.
Getting shocked, right?
So I'm doing that throughout the day. I get on my 5-plate, for lymphatic drainage.
Do a little bit of breathing, probably. Do a little bit of like box breathing.
Brain tap. I do
a little brain tap, right?
So it's crazy when I think about it. I actually spend more time on the recovery and optimization on those ends versus, and even, like I wear my Oura ring, so I'm big into like sleep data.
Absolutely, man. I got, sometimes I got 2 or 3 things on, sometimes 4, because I'm always checking it out. Well, no, I think that's what what I have found is that people don't understand how important that recovery side is, because I see elite athletes who break, and now all of a sudden the answer is, I'm not getting to the puck like I used to. Well, that's because their nervous system is now, worn down. They've lost their coherence, right? So brain coherence of the brain telling the muscles where to fire, and they're elite. right? That's the difference. If we brought somebody in here, we line up 4 people and they're elite. We think, who's the elite skier or who's the elite basketball player? I mean, you're going to measure your hands and their arms, and you're going to think all this stuff up. But in the end, what it really is, it's the ability of their nervous system to recover from the workload that they did the night before.
Wow.
And we learned that when we worked with Corvette race team. So we had them swallow a telemetry pill, had them race around a track, and we saw as their core body temperature went up, their reaction time was off, and then their track times would falter. So then we worked them up, cleaned them up, right? Okay. Did the whole program, look at their amino acids, vitamins, nutrients. Hey, you got any exposures? Clean all that up. And then we used something that worked to decrease microglial activation. We developed something called synapsin, which was a nasal spray.
Oh, God, I love that.
Yeah, well.
With the RG3?
I developed that.
Hold on, you're the one who developed it?
I'm the developer of that.
Why did I not know that?
Come on, man. See, I had to give you a surprise.
Dude, that is my friend. So, Dr. Willicks got me on that. He actually got it. I saw him writing the prescription to all his top CEOs. And I was just, Doc, what is this? Why are you gonna? He said, well, if I tell you, you're gonna have to start taking it. And I'm like, I know who these guys are that you're writing a prescription. They're not sick. You know, you're doing it for optimization purposes.
Right.
So I was like, give it to me. And no lie and correct me if I'm abusing it, but for the last 7 years, I do it every single morning.
No, you're not abusing it. I've been doing it for 25 years. I was the N of 1. I was the first person to do it.
Wow.
But we theorized it, and it was a crazy story. I mean, I'm at the University of Cincinnati. I'm at the College of Pharmacy. I'm teaching. And a professor from the University of Beijing, botanical medicine.
Hold on 1 second. For the listeners and viewers who don't know what we're talking about, you hear me talk about this all the time. I do this nasal spray every morning, and it puts my life in high definition. I hear better, see better, speak better. Everything is just, it's almost like the limitless pill. For me, that's what it does. It doesn't do that for everybody, but this nasal spray. So this is what Jim is talking about.
A lot of people feel like you feel on it. Right. I'm going to tell you, an overwhelming majority, about 86% actually. We've actually, on a lot of folks we've surveyed. So he comes and says, you know, this is ginsenoside R3, you know, and he broke in English, you know, good for the brain, good for the brain. And I'm going, yeah, okay, great. I'm busy. I got to teach. I didn't really pay attention. I was a little bit young and arrogant, to be honest. You know, I'm busy in the college. Well, I'm researching for the next 3 years on what do you do to quiet microglial activation, because my doctor had a spectrum disorder clinic and microglial in my institute. So that was one of our verticals that we had. And so I'm looking at it going, I got to figure out microglial activation. I keep coming up RG3. I look behind me and I still have the bottle that he gave me.
Wow. But
it was in solid state and it was so expensive. You couldn't make it in a pill. I mean, there'd be thousands of dollars a pill. So a compounding pharmacist myself, we figured out how to solubilize it. We were the first ones to solubilize it. And then I tried it on myself. I was like, wow, this is really working pretty well. And then we started utilizing it and seeing just what you did. Executives, they got rid of that midday, I can't make a decision after 3 p.m., right? I'm foggy headed. I'm tired. My brain's not working. I'm not sleeping well. Well, then the Corvette race team thing came up, and I thought, you know what? I think we're going to try this. So they would race around the track. They would do ginsenoside R3, the synapsin spray, when they got in the car, and they'd run around, and guess what happened? Core body temperature didn't go up. Reaction time stayed stable. They went and won Le Mans.
Wow.
And then from there, I've used it on all kinds of applications for helping athletes get over their TBIs, to exactly what your desire is. And why I use it is, you know, I'm 66 and I got to get up on stage and lecture sometimes 6-8 hours straight. Yeah. And I got to make sure my brain's still percolating pretty well. And I honestly believe that is probably the reason why I think I'm still firing pretty good at my age is that RG3. Now, we recently came out with a RB1 RG3 combination that's in a chewable tablet. It's a liposome, solid state liposome that you could chew. That's
what's the name of the product?
That's Synapsin and Synapsin Pro. They're both They're
This
both
is
they're
your
both
product?
chewable tablets.
No,
Yeah.
of course. You take
I don't ever talk about stuff I invent.
you
I'm
take
sorry,
two-
man. We're
This
an
is
hour
funny.
into this
All
show,
right,
and I'm just starting to
gonna
talk
take
to
a
you.
sip of water for a second.
I'm sorry, man. I've invented a lot of stuff.
I love the nasal spray, but then when I go out to a conference to go speak, I don't have the whole little refrigeration to bring the nasal. So I'm like, So now I have the bottle of the Pro, and I take them, I chew them. They're a little tart sometimes, but knowing what it is, I can travel with it now.
That's
too.
right. That's right.
yours. Man,
That is.
That's
No,
amazing.
I mean, if you remember Thorne Research when they came out with Catalyte and Elevate and all those powders for performance, so I developed those. And
Wow.
And I'll tell you when it's hot. If you want to know when it's really cool, because you like to work out. There's one that we put this 98% salidroside from rhodiola, right? 98%. Usually it's only 5%. This is a 98%. It's called Landkind, and that came out of France, and put it in that liposomal delivery, the chewable liposome, polylayer liposome, which has 100% absorption. It's been studied,
Right.
That the very first time you chew it up, do some sort of endurance or HIIT workout, and you will blow that workout away like you've never before. Very first time, I promise. I absolutely know it'll be that effective that
Is
quick.
this available for me to purchase?
Enduro 2, that's called.
Enduro 2.
Yeah.
Enduro 2.
It's really I mean, I have a blast. I love formulating. I mean, it's so much fun to look at. Remember I told you when I went through pharmacy school, we're extracting stuff. I've never lost my interest in extractions and things that work, though. I'm passionate about things that work. People feel them.
I love that, man. So all my favorite supplements, you're the guy. Man, you learn so many new things on this damn podcast. I love it.
Well, I never talk about it. I got to be honest. I'm always a little shy about like the invention side. I don't know why. I don't want people to think I'm like, I'm hawking something, I guess.
For me, like cognitive health is very important, especially when you're moving around so much. I'm speaking on TV, on the news. I'm speaking on the podcast. I'm speaking publicly. Like, I want to make sure I get my words out, make sure that they're clear, they make sense.
Right.
So for me, I'm doing everything you could think of to really enhance my cognitive health. I do my C8 MCT oil, the one that Dave Asprey came up with. I do the bulletproof coffee in the morning. I'm doing my brain tap, NR, NMN. I'm still kind of like I got in this whole phase of a lot of confusion. Even though we offer the NAD drips, now I have a lot of experts saying, well, the NAD infusions really don't work. It's not actually it's too large of of the size. It's not going in there. You have to use NMN or you have to use NR. So what am I doing? I'm stacking all three of them. Something has
Just
to
cover
work.
my bases.
Right. So I'm doing NMN, I'm doing the NR, the True Nitrogen NR, and they have the IV one too. I haven't.
Yeah, the NRIV. Yeah. That one's interesting because you can run it in like 20 minutes, right? And you don't get any of the chest discomfort. The only thing I'll say about NAD is, people with addictive issues, and depression,
right?
Clinically, if you were using it in your practice, you were seeing it work.
Yeah.
So I think it brings up that point of sometimes things work when there's illness or imbalance, but maybe it's not as good when you're kind of imbalanced if you're just wanting to hold yourself in that state of optimization, right? Not as dramatic as stuff. So maybe it's a little more of the NR, oral stuff on a regular basis, but when you really tap that dopamine down,
right,
and you need that, NADIV, that helps like refill that tank, because there's too many people that have said they've seen benefit from it.
And
So, but I do agree that I'll give you another example. Everybody thought metformin was amazing for people that were, anti-aging, right? Metformin, everybody take metformin.
60 minutes, I remember that.
Remember?
Yeah.
Well, then they found out that, metformin's great for prediabetes and diabetes because it lowers blood sugar, helps with mitochondrial function. But in the well population, it actually prevented putting on lean mass. So the big proponents for that kind of backed off when they kind of started seeing that happen. I kind of thought that was going to happen because the one thing I saw even in the early studies on metformin, and I think metformin's a great drug, by the way. It depletes B12, which you should, if you're on metformin, you should always have your methylmalonic acid levels checked every 6 months because it could end up getting peripheral neuropathy. But the reality was, it showed that you could get ragged mitochondria if you're on metformin for a while. Now, that could just be because it depletes coenzyme Q10 too, which is pretty important in mitochondrial health.
Right.
So I think it's big. I think we have to understand sometimes things work when we're trying to get people back to, like you said, they're kind of chronically unwell and you're trying to get them well. And they're using a little more dramatic stuff. And then maybe when they're well, we need to have more nuance to what we're doing.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a lot of stuff in the functional medicine space, biohacking space that I've personally have done. And I've told myself, you know what? I don't think I'd ever do that again unless I'm actually like sick. Yeah,
Right.
like I did I did EBO too. And it's just I'm
That's
a
pretty
healthy
rough.
guy, and I just didn't feel right for quite a few weeks after.
How long did you feel off from that?
It was actually probably at least a couple months.
Wow.
A couple months.
Wow, it's powerful, man.
Like I'm very in tune to my body.
Sure, of
and I
knew
knew something was just like not right.
Right.
And I couldn't figure it out. I had this kind of like very persistent cough that I couldn't get. And who knows? Maybe it was something else. But I heard from a few other people they were having the same issue. And I think if someone's dealing with something that needs that aggressive type of treatment, then yes. But just for me to say, well, I just want to live until I'm 180, I'll start eating the blueberries instead for right now. Yeah.
You and I think so. We're so similar in our philosophy on that because I think sometimes, it's that old story of, we're pulling out a double barrel shotgun to get the fly off the wall. And you got to be real careful about that because, you might get that fly, but you're going to have a lot of repair bills.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
And your body's the same way. You got to be careful about when you're inducing these high oxidative therapies. You just got to be careful about what you're doing. And I've always been more about trying to get people to look. In the end, for me, the big goal is I just want people to wake up in the morning and they have this one thought: I feel good today.
I love that.
I feel good today. And here's the way I need to eat. Here's the nutrients I'm going to take. And this is how I'm going to learn what I need to do for my exercise. And I'm going to sleep good at night. And yeah, I'm going to have stress in my life, but I learned some tools how to cope. And it's not this living a life that's, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this, I got to do that. If I don't have my Faraday glasses, well, I've got 1 foot in the cold plunge and 1 in the sauna while I'm getting an IV, right? I don't want that.
Well, and that's actually something good to talk about because I know you're a data-driven type of guy. And we have all these different wearables, and we're doing the blood work, we're doing this, we're doing the cold plunge. There's a certain level. Listen, I agree. You can't improve what you don't measure, right? So yes, we have to be data-driven,
right?
But at the same point in time, too much of analyzing your data and the glucose monitor throughout the day. I was talking to one of the guys at the barbershop, one of the other barbers. He says, yeah, my wife ended up getting a continuous glucose monitor. And I just ran out to the grocery store to get glucose tablets. I said, what? Is she a diabetic? He said, no. But the thing, he said, Sam, I can't go to sleep at night. Her phone's going off because her blood sugar's dropping. So I got to give her. I said, dude, take that thing off her arm and come see me. Just throw it away for now. I'll buy you a new one when the time is right.
Later.
So people can be overly obsessed with this data and all of the different modalities. And I got to take this pill at this time. I mean, how bad can that really become? Can that become more, that stress, can it overdo the good benefits of actually taking care of your health?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I know people that, wear a Whoop and they're freaking out about their sleep. I will never score high on my sleep, ever. Because I never sleep more than 7 hours. I get 4.5 hours of REM in deep sleep.
Right.
And I sleep deep and I feel rested when I wake up. But they got that data set at 7 and 9. And so I'm only going to get to 84%.
Can we talk about that for a second? Because this is one of the reasons why I got a problem with the Aura. I only sleep.
We're going to throw them away?
No, we can't do that. We can't do it.
Okay.
This was too cool, actually.
I like mine. I got mine's ultra human. I got an Ultra Human. Yeah.
So Aura did a collaboration with Gucci, and they only did it for a few months. So I bought
I haven't even seen one of those in real life. I mean, this is like seeing like a
find them
Rolls
anymore.
Royce Phantom or something, man. Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
So I don't want to get rid of it.
No. That's a fashion statement right there, and you get some value, right?
Yeah,
You get some value.
So the interesting thing about the Aura, I only sleep after I left the fire department. I only sleep about 5 hours.
Right.
I don't wake up to an alarm clock. I fall asleep when my body tells me to fall asleep. I do prepare myself to go to sleep, but
good.
I don't wake up to an alarm clock.
Right.
I let my body naturally wake up. So when my body says, "Hey, it's time to wake up," I wake up. I go do my morning routines. I have 1 cup of coffee a couple hours after I wake up. I don't have a midnight crash. I feel good. Everything else is on point. But my readiness score, I can't, every morning, I can never get it in the 90s. But my issue with this is, yes, we recover when we sleep. But what this is not taking consideration, it doesn't take into consideration the $150,000 red light bed I have. Right. It doesn't take into consideration the hyperbaric chamber that I use.
That's correct.
None of the supplements that I'm taking that I'm
That's
optimizing my health with. So is that score in the morning really accurate?
I think it's really very. I'll tell you the other thing is I think a chest strap is much more accurate for readiness and HRV. Because when I look at my HRV, I used to get. I'll tell you how I figured it out. I first get the ring, and then I get this, and I'm looking at my HRV, and I'm going, "Oh, wait a second, I'm pretty fit." I mean, if you saw my workout yesterday, you go, "You know what? For an old man, he's got it going on." All right. So then I got a Morpheus strap, and then I got because it's got the 1 lead EKG there. You can pick it up. My HRV's in the 70s. In the low 80s. Here it's like 25, 30. My Apple Watch, when I was wearing my Apple Watch, is telling me I'm going to die because my heart rate variability is so low. Now, I didn't freak out about it because I knew I felt good. But you're bringing up a really important point. These kind of tools are meant to encourage you to do better, but not to freak you out.
Right.
And if you start going down that path, you have to rethink about, hey, this is giving me information that helps me to be better. But if I feel good and I know I'm doing the right things, well, maybe the algorithm isn't advanced enough, right, to be the data that's specific to you because of all those other things that you're doing, right?
I agree.
So I think that's important.
Use it more as a guide and a tool, not necessarily that crutch for everything you're doing.
No, I'm not big on that. I think, we have to rely on ourselves.
Yeah. Understand your body. Jim, biohacking is now $1 billion industry. What's the biggest lie people are buying into when someone is doing their stacks and all this other stuff?
Well, they think that they can isolate. It's like allopathic biohacking, right? When we criticized medicine earlier, it was a criticism of it's an algorithm and you're taking a drug for that algorithm. They're doing the same thing with biohacking in many cases, right? They're picking a particular peptide to think that it's going to do this because it inserts here, and therefore all your little cells are going to line up and do exactly what they're supposed to do, right? Like, I'm going to take this FOXO4 DRI and only my senescent cells are going to react to it because it controls that, right? And so I think it's just important to understand your body is more complex than that. You always have to look upstream and downstream, and most of all, how do you feel? The one thing I know, because I did a lot of work with MeScreen and talked with those guys, and they had some of the biggest kind of biohackers kind of getting those tests, and those folks had more mitochondria issues than people that didn't, right? Wow. Because they're overdoing it. So I think the lesson for, like, to me, biohacking, that's what alchemists did. That's what we pharmacists. I mean, we're the first biohackers, man. We're getting chemistry going, right? Yeah. I think it's fix what needs fixed and figure out how to keep what's good, And that's where it comes into what nutrients are right for you. Do you have any specific deficiencies? Maybe after you clean up the exposome and your epigenetics, you can look back to your genetics instead of looking at your genetics first and going, oh, I need MTHFR, I need a methylfolate. Instead of worrying about that stuff, clean up how your body's expressed first, and then look at your genetics and go, oh, okay,
Right.
I need to do this. Maybe with detox, you got to look at those genes a little bit. But in general, you got to put an order to it.
Yeah.
And you know what? Let's stop worrying about living to 120 or 180. Let's just try to get more people to live to 85 on less than 5 drugs.
Yep. I'm with you on that.
You know?
So it's safe to say that you're more of a health span versus longevity guy.
I'm now that I'm 66.
Okay, so you might want.
I'm both. I'm both, man. I mean, I want to live a really long time and be healthy.
All right. You're right. I forgot who I'm talking to.
You got it. You know, it's funny because people always say, I remember here. I'm going to give you back when I was your age, right? I remember it's like, hey, it's not about how old you are. It's how old you feel. Well, when you get to my age, no, it's about how old you are.
Yeah,
it really is. And you want to be functional. You want to enjoy it as long as you can. But you know what? I live by this simple, very simple saying that I coined it. Even Da Vinci died. Right? We're all going to get to there at some point. And we just want to extract every bit of joy and health we can in that journey to, when it's finally, time to call it a day and we go to a better place.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So really quick, this is quick fire off. I'm going to ask you something. You just like throw it out there.
All right, here goes.
So, it's going to be about peptides.
Can I take my synapsin?
I need some. If you got some, give me some.
All right.
Peptides.
Yes.
In your opinion, best peptide for lean mass?
PEG MGF.
Okay. Best peptide for immune function?
TA1.
Best peptide for cognitive?
Cerebrolysin, but probably P6C, which will be out this year. P6C is going to change the cognitive piece.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I have to look
You
at
want to
that.
remember that one.
Yeah, I know. I'm taking notes. You're the guy, so I got to take notes. Best peptide for hair, skin, and nails?
Copper peptide. Yeah, GHKCU.
Best peptide for sexual health?
Well, I mean, PT141 is going to give you that neurologic arousal, but I like Kisspeptin. Kisspeptin because it helps the amygdala for women, it like releases the inhibition and, kind of helps dopamine and reward.
Yeah. Best peptide for cardiovascular health?
I'd say GLP-1.
For some reason, I thought you were going to say that.
Yeah.
Best peptide for pain?
Well, metenkephalin, opioid mechanoreceptor or KPV. Unless it's neurologic, then it would be ARA290.
Okay. And then last one here, best peptide for weight loss?
Obviously, GLP-1s are good. If you're a woman, AOD 9604, I think, works incredible. It seems to work more on women than on men. Yeah, I think in general, the GLP-1s are going to be or when we say GLP-1, that includes what's coming out soon from Lilly, retatrutide, which is kind of a triple agonist.
Yeah, that one's going to be something.
Going to be a monster, but might be a biologic. We'll see, right?
No one can produce it at that point.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Cool. So, Jim, one of the other things we're going to do, we're going to have a little fun. So this is one of my favorite podcasters, Stephen Bartlett with The Diary of a CEO. He came out with these conversation cards.
Uh-oh.
So you'll open that up.
Okay.
And then just pull 2 cards out of there, random cards. I have
All right.
no clue what those cards are going to say.
Okay.
But this is for us to get to know you a little bit better.
Okay.
As we finish up here.
I got 2.
So you'll read it and then just answer it.
What have you done recently for someone else? Today, I was at the airport and a lady was carrying a kid, wheeling 2 bags with an extra bag on top, and her 9-year-old daughter was pushing a bag too big for her. And I stopped and got off the bus. I went And I said, can I help you take your bags to where you're going? And I walked her over to her Uber, and so she could just worry about carrying her baby, and I could take her bags for her. So that's what I did recently.
Awesome, man. Awesome.
So when was a moment that you were most afraid? You know what? It was when my brother was in the hospital with renal, liver, and pancreatic failure. My father was diagnosed with his duodenal adenocarcinoma and getting a surgery. So I was running between hospitals, and my mother was already in a nursing home with dementia. And that's all I had. Like, I came from a family of 4, and we moved around a lot as a kid. I was in 4 grade schools by the time I was in 8th grade, right? 3 cities, 4 grade schools. And it just hit me like, man, my core of who I am is going away.
Wow.
And that
how did
scared
you
me.
stay strong? How you stay strong?
How do I stay strong?
During that time, how did you stay strong?
I have tremendous faith. You know, I have a tremendous faith that I committed when I was 21 years old. I kind of had a rough patch, and I got out of it, and I kind of committed a life of service to, you know, that's why I wrote 26 books and 5 databases, and nobody heard of me, and except unless you were a doc going to a training, nobody heard of Jim LaValle till 2 years ago when I started talking. I stay strong because I have a strong belief that, you know, God's by my side. And if I do the right thing and just try to help others, just like my lady today, you know what? You're going to feel pretty good about yourself, and you're going to be strong.
Amen on that, man. So my last question here related to that is, how important is faith in the healing process and just your health in general?
Well, I think your faith helps you whether you are going to heal or not. You're either going to face the consequences with assuredness of what's coming after, or it's going to help you to heal. Either way, I think like faith, something like the belief of something bigger than you and the importance of touching others. I think that's what pulls us through everything. And I think if I had to, you know, it's kind of funny because I'm going through this 42nd anniversary of working on people. I get a little choked up about it because I think about, like, I really focus when I'm with someone. Like, I'm 100% there with them.
Present.
Just right there, man.
That's awesome.
And I think that's why I think I was pretty successful, and why a lot of people came to me over the years with my clinicians that worked with me, my nurses, my doctors, my dietitians, our acupuncturists, all the folks that came around, because I think they realized that. And I think that was, that was big.
Awesome. Jim, as we wrap up here, if there's someone who's been listening or viewing the podcast that truly resonates with today's message,
sure,
what is that last thing you can leave them off with?
Look for joy in your life. Work towards joy. When there's joy in your heart, it's hard for disease to find a way to enter your body.
Amazing. And if people want to find you, where can they find you?
The Real Jim LaValle. You know, go on Instagram, JimLaValle.com. And, other than that, show up at one of the events I'm talking at.
That's the truth, man. I'll be there.
All right.
Jim, it was a pleasure having you on a Healthy Point of View podcast. This was much needed.
Well, let me tell you, I have been looking forward to coming here because I know how big a message that you put out there. So, I mean, I've been excited about this for the last 2 weeks.
I appreciate it. Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Awesome. Guys, you heard Jim. Joy. We have to actually chase the joy, get ourselves in that position. Life becomes a lot easier. It's easier to facilitate things. It's easier to put your thoughts together when you have that joy internally. There's ways on how to get there. There's a lot of people out there who can help you get to that point. How I always say, you want to make sure, just like every athlete, every great athlete has a coach. There's coaches out there that will give you that guidance. Make sure you take this podcast and share it with your friends, your family. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all that other fun stuff, and we'll see you for the next one. Awesome.